Professor Marianne Cummings is a particle physicist with the Fermi Lab, and she is Parks Commissioner for Aurora, Illinois. I don't think she can fix our parking tickets quite yet. Professor Ann Lee writes over at the Daily Kos under the handle Annie Lee. Everybody should read Professor Ann Lee at the Daily Kos. Among other things, she writes a nightly update on Ukraine, on the war in Ukraine. It comes out at midnight.
I think the GOP just simply wants the airtime. And it's not doing them any good, because all it shows is that Democrats are disciplined. They all vote, and they're voting as a block. So, maybe that's where we are right now.
That's what we used to say about the Republicans just 2 or 3 years ago, that they're all disciplined, they vote as a block. And, again, I think what's lost here was, and it's tragic. I mean, it's all fun and games over there on the clown side. But, the fact is, and this is, I think, serious, the progressives, particularly the Squad, but the people that Kyle Kulinski and others had recruited to run as Justice Democrats, that was the whole point of them. Kyle Kulinski explicitly said he wanted to have a progressive version of the Tea Party, of the people that made John Boehner's life miserable. But they got real policy concessions. The Squad and other progressives just mugging for their selfies and with the thumbs up and pointing to the Democrats. I mean, this is not the own they think it is. It's just telling them, they're just broadcasting that, hey, we're good little boys and girls. We've been brought to heel by well-trained dogs by the Democratic Party leadership. And they would never do that. And that is, we need a new, more attitudinal kind of progressive, because if they thought that they could infiltrate a system and eventually get good at the game that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, for that matter, Louis Gohmert and Mitch McConnell and those clowns all excel at, and they would be able to disrupt and transform the system, that's delusional. Maybe 10, 20 years, they'll get those plum committee chairmanships if they behave themselves, by which point they will be so beholden to people, and they will be like 10 or 20 years away from their whatever grassroots activism they had. And so they're totally surrounded and absorbed the culture of DC. So, I actually think that things will settle down in a week. I don't know if it's going to be McCarthy or Jim Jordan. It won't matter. It'll be somebody who completely, toes the corporate military industrial complex, national security state line, and will, the leadership of both parties will settle into their good cop, bad cop roles as far as, populism is concerned, as far as the Democrats are concerned, for or the people in general. And, it's just like we said 2 years ago, this was an amazing opportunity for the progressives to be serious. You don't have to be a clown show. You could have a 2 or 3 non-negotiable demands, have those fights publicly. What those guys are fighting for, Boehlert and all, nobody cares about. However, the kinds of things they promised they would bring the ruckus and disrupt for: Medicare for all, Green New Deal, living wage, Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. The stars were so aligned to push something like that through, and they did not step up. And that was just they weren't going to have that situation anytime soon again. And they took a big pass, and we're going to be suffering for that.
The 20 far-right conservatives, am I wrong in saying they can't be bought off? They are true believers. They are ideologues. They're not looking for money. They're looking that there's something pure to them. Professor Hussein?
I don't think so at all. I think they're in it for attention. If you think that there's an ideology, one component of it is, chaos is good because it gives us a chance to, gain attention and show that we're owning the libs and that we're owning the, people who are bought off by the libs and so on. I don't think they are true believers at all. They may have like some bigoted, orientations that define their politics, but they're show people performing for an audience that has been created over some generation and a half of disillusion with U.S. party politics and brought to a fever pitch by the Trump movement. And they're playing to that audience and trying to make their own careers. And they've realized that there is a way to build your career, not by following party loyalty and being good little girls and boys the way, Marianne was just castigating the progressives, and following seniority and, showing respect for the rules and the institution, but that there is a way to political power and prestige and attention, through causing a ruckus and being a disruptor and taking the ethics of social media into the halls of Congress. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here.
Right.
I mean, Bernie
think they can
Sanders
easily be bought off.
I mean, Bernie Sanders did that somewhat. He was able to chart his own independent course. He was considered the amendment king in the Senate. Now, very rarely do people bring up votes on their own and pass it through. Most votes are, what they call must pass spending bills and things like that. But once in a while, Bernie Sanders got one of those in too. But for the most part, he was able to get amendments to these must spend bills in a significant way. I mean, significant progressive amendments to spending bills, and build up a brand so that he actually was in danger of becoming president of the United States twice.
And how do you get Medicare for all? How do you put the health insurance companies out of business, which you have to do in order to pass Medicare for all or keep Medicare for all? How do you do that without 20 Democrats willing to shut the government down and shut the entire system down? We need that on the left. We need a movement that's not afraid of a national strike that says, hey, no pain, no gain. Yeah. We're going to shut the government down. Really? You're worried about the bond market? Well, pass Medicare for all, because we're shutting down and it would force supposedly CNN, MSNBC, Fox News to air the complaints of these 20 renegades. And supposedly the American people would say, yeah, come to think of it, healthcare in this country is for profit. It's a joke and it's killing us. Unless we have 20 doctrinaires willing to do what the Freedom Caucus is willing to do, we're not going to get Medicare for all. It's that simple. You have to take it and you have to shut the whole thing down.
Yeah, you have to be willing to sacrifice your career too. I mean, nobody worries about these clowns on the right, really, because they're tolerated because none of them really are going to, and that includes Trump, are really going to upset the system. The person that had everyone terrified, among Democratic and Republican leadership was Bernie Sanders.
Right.
That was the one person they could not tolerate. The Dems were willing to have a second term of Trump rather than to risk a President Bernie Sanders.